Welcome to a journey into the intricate depths of the human heart. In this compelling modern psychological drama, we unravel the complex tapestry of a marriage built on hidden truths. Follow Sarah and David as their seemingly perfect suburban life is rocked by the echoes of a past carefully concealed. This is a tale of betrayal and resilience, of the crushing weight of secrets and the arduous path to forgiveness. Will their love survive the unveiling of a buried past, or will the shadows of deception tear them apart? Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more gripping stories to life. Sarah stirs the cream into her coffee, the pale liquid swirling into the dark brew like a secret reluctantly revealed. The kitchen in their suburban Connecticut home is bathed in the soft, diffused light of a late autumn morning. Outside, fallen leaves in shades of crimson and gold carpet the manicured lawn, a picturesque scene that feels miles away from the chaotic, dimly lit bars of her past. She glances at the framed wedding photo on the counter, her smiling face next to David's, a picture of easy happiness. A pang of guilt, sharp and familiar, twists in her stomach. David is upstairs, the muffled sound of his shower a comforting rhythm. They have built a life here, brick by painstaking brick. A life of quiet dinners, weekend trips to the coast, and comfortable silences that once felt like the ultimate intimacy. Now, those silences are often filled with the unspoken weight of her past, a shadow she desperately tries to keep from eclipsing their present. She met David 3 years ago at a charity gala. He was everything she wasn't: open, honest, with a kind smile that seemed to see only the good in people. He was an architect, grounded in reality, building tangible things. She was something else. Someone who had learned to build walls instead of structures, to navigate the murky waters of survival with a practiced smile and a carefully constructed persona. The bar where she worked, the Velvet Curtain, was in a different city, a different life. It was a place of fleeting connections, of whispered desires and unspoken loneliness. She had taken the job out of desperation, a temporary measure that stretched into years. The tips were good, enough to keep her afloat, but the cost was etched into her soul. The gazes, the casual touches, the feeling of being an object. They had all chipped away at her sense of self. When David came into her life, it was like a sudden burst of sunlight after a long, dark night. He didn't ask about her past, didn't pry. He saw the woman she was trying to become, the woman buried beneath layers of survival. She fell in love with his acceptance, with his unwavering belief in her. She told him she had worked various service jobs before moving here, carefully omitting the details. The lie had felt like a small compromise at the time, a necessary shield. Now, it felt like a chasm growing between them. The shower stops, and Sarah's muscles tense. She quickly sips her coffee, the warmth doing little to thaw the cold dread in her chest. David's footsteps on the stairs are a countdown. She forces a smile as he enters the kitchen, his hair damp, a towel slung around his neck. "Morning," he says, his voice still a little rough with sleep. He leans in to kiss her, a familiar gesture that now feels loaded with her deception. "Morning," she replies, her voice sounding a little too bright, too cheerful. He opens the refrigerator, scanning the contents. "Pancakes today? Sounds good," she says, her mind racing. How long can she keep this hidden? What would he think if he knew? The shame washes over her, a suffocating wave. She pictures his face, the shock, the hurt, the disappointment.
It's a vision that haunts her waking hours and invades her dreams. She moves to the counter, gathering the ingredients for pancakes, her hands trembling slightly. The mundane task offers a temporary distraction from the turmoil within, but the truth, she knows, is a persistent guest, always waiting for the opportune moment to reveal itself, to shatter the fragile peace they have so carefully constructed.
The smell of sizzling bacon and sweet pancakes fills the kitchen, a domestic symphony that should bring comfort. But for Sarah, it's a discordant tune. David, humming softly, flips a pancake with practiced ease. He catches her eye, his smile open and genuine. "Something on your mind, sweetie?" Sarah flinches, a barely perceptible tremor. "No, just thinking about work." The lie rolls off her tongue, well-rehearsed, yet each time it feels heavier. She works part-time at a local bookstore, a stark contrast to the late nights and forced smiles of her past. It's a quiet job, filled with the scent of old paper and the gentle murmur of turning pages, a sanctuary. "Everything okay with Mrs. Henderson's order?" David asks, always attentive to the small details of her day. "Oh, yes, perfectly fine," she says quickly, perhaps too quickly. She turns to set the table, the clinking of plates a welcome distraction. David is a man who thrives on order, on predictable routines. His life is a carefully constructed blueprint, and she, with her hidden past, feels like a rogue element, a potential tremor that could bring the whole structure down. Later that afternoon, David leaves for a meeting, his briefcase in hand, a kiss on her forehead. "See you for dinner, love. I'll pick up the wine." The silence that descends after he leaves is deafening. Sarah walks through the house, her fingers trailing over the smooth surfaces of their furniture, the cool glass of a framed photograph. Everything here speaks of permanence, of a future meticulously planned, but her own past is a ghost, whispering doubts into every quiet corner. She finds herself drawn to the old wooden box hidden in the back of her closet. It's a relic from another life, a small, unassuming container that holds fragments of who she used to be. Inside, tucked beneath faded photographs in a dried corsage from a long-forgotten night, is a small, tarnished silver locket. She rarely looks at it. It belonged to her mother, a woman who had also known struggle, though of a different kind. Her mother had once told her, "Some secrets are best left buried, Sarah, for everyone's sake." Sarah had taken that advice to heart, perhaps too much so. She opens the locket. Inside are two tiny, blurry photos, one of her as a child, grinning widely, missing a front tooth, the other, an older woman with tired but kind eyes, her mother. She traces the outline of her mother's face, a wave of sadness washing over her. Her mother had passed away before Sarah met David, before she had truly begun to build this new life. Sometimes she wished she could talk to her, seek guidance, or perhaps just confession, but the words had never come, not even to her mother, not fully. The memory of a specific night at the Velvet Curtain flashes in her mind, a particularly aggressive patron, the way her smile had felt glued to her face, the icy fear coiling in her gut. She had learned to anticipate, to deflect, to survive. Those skills, honed in the crucible of desperation, felt so alien to the gentle world David inhabited. Would he ever understand? Would he ever forgive the person she had to be to get by? She closes the locket, the click echoing in the stillness of the room. The box is quickly returned to its hiding place. It's a Pandora's box, she thinks, and she's terrified of what might fly out if it were truly opened. As dusk begins to settle, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Sarah prepares dinner. The mundane routine is a lifeline, grounding her in the present. But the conversation with David earlier, his perceptive question about her thoughts, continues to gnaw at her. The cracks in her carefully constructed facade feel wider, more visible. She knows, deep down, that the truth, like the relentless tide,
will eventually find a way to erode even the strongest of walls. And when it does, she fears everything they have built might crumble.
The weeks that follow are a delicate dance of normalcy for Sarah. She throws herself into her bookstore job, finding solace in the quiet order of literature. Each evening, she greets David with a practiced smile, her voice carefully modulated to betray no hint of the churning anxiety beneath. Yet, the small, seemingly insignificant details of their life together begin to feel fraught with meaning, each an opportunity for her secret to unravel. One evening, David returns home with a bottle of champagne, a celebratory glint in his eyes. "Big news, love! My firm just landed the bid for the downtown redevelopment project. It's huge, a career maker." He pulls her into a joyous embrace, spinning her around. Sarah forces a laugh, her mind already racing. This project means more late nights for David, more networking events, more opportunities for their paths to intertwine with people from a past she desperately wants to forget. "That's wonderful, David," she manages, her voice a little strained. The genuine excitement on his face is a stark contrast to the dread that chills her. He deserves this success, deserves a partner who can celebrate without reservation, without the constant fear of exposure. The first hint of trouble arrives subtly, a casual remark at a dinner party hosted by David's colleagues. One of the architects, a boisterous man named Mark, is regaling the table with tales of his younger days, his voice booming. "Oh man, remember those dives downtown? The velvet curtain was a real experience, right? For a while there, it felt like everyone knew someone who'd worked there." Sarah's breath catches in her throat. She feels a sudden, intense heat flush her cheeks, then an icy coldness creep through her limbs. She keeps her gaze fixed on her plate, meticulously cutting a piece of chicken. David, oblivious, laughs along with the others. "Never really frequented those kinds of places myself," he says, easily. Sarah risks a glance at Mark. He's still laughing, but his eyes, for a fleeting moment, seem to flicker towards her, a hint of something unreadable in their depths. Did he recognize her? Or was it just her paranoia playing tricks? The rest of the evening is a blur of forced smiles and carefully constructed small talk. Every word feels like a tightrope walk over a gaping chasm. The next morning, Sarah wakes early, the encounter at the dinner party replaying in her mind. Mark's glance, the casual mention of the velvet curtain. It felt like a direct hit, a sniper shot aimed squarely at her carefully guarded secret. She tries to rationalize it away. It was a long time ago. She looks different now. Her hair is a different color. Her style has changed. But the fear is a cold, persistent knot in her stomach. She notices David watching her more closely these days. He's subtle about it, but she feels his gaze linger, sees the slight furrow in his brow when she's lost in thought. He asks more questions about her day, about her past, not probing, but curious, as if he senses a shift in the currents beneath the calm life they live. "You seem a little distracted lately, Sarah," he says one evening as they're doing dishes. He's drying, she's washing. The familiar routine feels suddenly brittle. "Everything all right?" She almost tells him. The words are right there, on the tip of her tongue, a desperate plea for release. But the fear of losing him, of shattering his perfect world, holds them captive. "Just tired, I guess," she replies, her voice barely a whisper against the running water. "The bookstore's been busy." He places the towel on the counter and gently turns her to face him, his hands resting on her shoulders. His gaze is warm, searching. "You know you can tell me anything, right?"
Anything at all. Sarah looks into his kind, trusting eyes, and a wave of profound guilt washes over her, heavier than ever before. The silence stretches between them, filled with the unspoken truth that hovers, a tangible presence. She pulls away, needing to escape his piercing gaze. Of course, David, you know that, but they both know, in that moment, that something important remains unsaid. A fragile thread beginning to unravel, threatening to expose the intricate tapestry of lies she has woven around her heart.
The subtle shift in David's demeanor gnaws at Sarah. His questions, though gentle, feel like tiny probes, each one threatening to puncture the fragile membrane of her secret. She finds herself retreating, guarding her words, even her expressions. The spontaneous joy that once characterized their interactions is now replaced by a calculated reserve on her part. David senses it, a growing distance between them, a coolness where warmth used to reside. One Saturday, while Sarah is at the bookstore, David decides to tackle the overflowing miscellaneous drawer in the kitchen. It's a chaotic repository of old receipts, forgotten keys, and a tangle of charging cords. He hums as he sorts through the clutter, a small domestic task that usually brings him a quiet sense of satisfaction. Tucked beneath a stack of old utility bills, his fingers brush against a small, stiff piece of paper. He pulls it out. It's a photograph. Not a typical one, not a snapshot from a family vacation or a blurry selfie. This is a professional headshot, clearly taken in a studio, but with an unsettling edge. Sarah is younger, much younger, perhaps early 20s. Her hair is styled differently, darker, more dramatic. Her makeup is heavier, emphasizing her eyes in a way he's never seen before. She's wearing a sleek, dark dress, and her smile is fixed, almost performative, lacking the genuine warmth he knows. In the background, subtly blurred, he can make out the distinctive, ornate pattern of a velvet curtain. David stares at the photo, a cold dread seeping into his bones. The name, the velvet curtain, echoes in his mind. The casual mention from Mark at the dinner party. He remembers Mark's fleeting glance at Sarah. It had seemed innocuous then, easily dismissed. Now a chilling connection forms. He flips the photo over. There's faded writing on the back, a scrawled phone number, and a name. Scarlett, not Sarah. His mind races, trying to reconcile the woman in the photo, this Scarlett, with the Sarah he married, the Sarah who reads poetry in the evenings and tends to their small garden. The dissonance is jarring, a violent rip in the fabric of his understanding. He feels a sudden, profound sense of disorientation, as if the ground beneath him has shifted. When Sarah returns home, the house is unusually quiet. She finds David in the living room, sitting on the sofa, the photograph held loosely in his hand. The setting sun casts long, accusatory shadows across the room. The air is thick, heavy with unspoken truths. Her eyes fall on the photo, and her heart plummets. The blood drains from her face, leaving her ashen. Her carefully constructed world, her years of silence, have just come crashing down. David slowly lifts his head. His eyes, usually so kind, are now clouded with confusion, hurt, and a growing sense of betrayal. He doesn't raise his voice, but the quiet intensity of his gaze is more devastating than any shout. "Sarah," he begins, his voice raspy, unfamiliar. He holds up the photograph. Who is Scarlett? The question hangs in the air, a final, inescapable verdict. Sarah feels a wave of nausea, her legs suddenly weak. There's no escaping it now. The secret, the terrible, consuming secret, is finally, irrevocably out. The carefully built walls have crumbled, leaving her exposed, vulnerable, and terrified of the precipice she now stands upon.
The single word, Scarlett, hangs in the air, a physical weight pressing down on Sarah.
Her breath hitches, and for a terrifying moment, she feels as though she might suffocate under the immense pressure of David's gaze. His eyes, usually so full of warmth, are now a mirror reflecting her deepest fear, judgment, and disillusionment. She wants to deny it, to lie again, to invent some convoluted explanation. But the photo in his hand, stark and undeniable, obliterates any such possibility. The velvet curtain in the background, the telltale makeup, the performative smile, it's all there, condemning her. The sheer exhaustion of maintaining the lie for so long suddenly washes over her, leaving her utterly depleted. David, her voice is a dry whisper, barely audible. She reaches out a trembling hand, then lets it fall, unsure of what to do, what to say. He doesn't move, doesn't react. He simply holds the photograph, his silence a more potent accusation than any shouted word. The quiet in the room is deafening, punctuated only by the frantic hammering of Sarah's own heart. It was a long time ago, she finally manages, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. She can feel tears pricking at her eyes, but she refuses to let them fall. She doesn't deserve his pity. A long time ago? David's voice is low, strained, the sound of a man trying to keep his composure in the face of an earthquake. What exactly was a long time ago, Sarah? Who is Scarlett? What is this place? He gestures vaguely at the photo. His brow is furrowed, not with anger, but with a profound, aching bewilderment. Sarah closes her eyes for a brief moment, steeling herself. The dam has broken. There's no turning back. It was a bar in Chicago. She opens her eyes, forcing herself to meet his gaze, even though every fiber of her being screams to look away. I worked there as a hostess. She deliberately uses the softer term, a desperate attempt to soften the blow. But the truth, raw and ugly, looms between them. Hostess. He knows what that implies, what it truly means in certain establishments. The understanding dawns in his eyes, slowly, painfully, like the sunrise after a nightmare. His face pales further, and a muscle twitches in his jaw. Hostess, he repeats, the word stripped of any euphemism, hollow and chilling. Meaning what exactly, Sarah? His voice is still quiet, dangerously so. Meaning you were a bar girl? A call girl? He struggles to form the words, as if they are foreign objects in his mouth. The horror in his eyes is palpable, a reflection of the image he knows he is now constructing of her. The accusation, though softly spoken, stings. She wants to defend herself, to explain the desperation, the lack of choices, the fear. But all that comes out is a choked sound. She nods, a single, agonizing nod, her past laid bare, ugly and undeniable. Yes, she whispers, her voice cracking. Sometimes, to survive. David drops the photograph onto the coffee table as if it suddenly burned his fingers. He pushes himself up from the sofa, turning his back to her, running a hand through his hair. His shoulders slump. The easy confidence, the comforting strength she always relied on him seems to evaporate from him, leaving behind a profound vulnerability. The silence that follows is thicker, colder than before. It's not just the absence of sound, but the void left by shattered trust, by years of carefully guarded secrets finally spilling out. Sarah watches his rigid back, her heart twisting in her chest. This is it. This is the moment she had dreaded, the reckoning she knew would eventually come. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the distant chirping of crickets outside, all mundane sounds that now highlight the devastating silence between them.
David stands rigidly, his back to Sarah, for what feels like an eternity. The silence stretches, taut and unbearable, a chasm opening between them. Sarah watches him, her breath shallow, her entire being braced for the inevitable explosion, the anger, the shouts, the condemnation she believes she deserves. But it doesn't come. Instead, a deep, shuddering sigh escapes him. He turns slowly, his face a mask of profound hurt. His eyes, usually so clear and direct, are now clouded with confusion and a pain that cuts Sarah deeper than any harsh words could. "Why, Sarah?" His voice is barely above a whisper, raw with disbelief. Why would you hide this from me? All these years?" The question hangs heavy, laden with the weight of their shared life, their intimacy, their trust. Sarah feels a fresh wave of tears welling, hot and stinging. "I was scared, David," she chokes out, the words difficult to force past the lump in her throat. "Terrified of losing you. Terrified you wouldn't want me anymore if you knew." She takes a hesitant step towards him, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "It was a different life, a desperate time. I wasn't proud of it. I wanted to bury it, to forget it ever happened. When I met you, you were light. You saw something good in me, something I didn't even see myself. I couldn't risk shattering that." David takes a step back, widening the distance between them. His gaze sweeps around the room, over the familiar furniture, the framed photographs of their wedding, their vacations, their everyday moments. He looks at their life, this beautiful, carefully constructed life, and then back at her, as if trying to reconcile the two. "You let me build a life with you, based on a lie, Sarah? Everything we have, every memory, was any of it real? Or was it all just part of the act?" The word act is a venomous dart, piercing her heart. "No," Sarah cries, a sob escaping her. "No, David, that's not true. Everything with you, us, that was real. More real than anything I'd ever known. That's why I was so afraid to lose it. That's why I kept it hidden. It felt like the only way to protect what we had." He shakes his head, a slow, deliberate movement that speaks volumes. "Protect it? By deceiving me? By letting me live in ignorance of who you truly were? Sarah, don't you understand? The foundation of our marriage, of any relationship, is trust. And you shattered it." His voice cracks on the last word, revealing the depth of his anguish. He walks to the window, staring out into the deepening twilight. The last vestiges of sunlight fade, replaced by the encroaching shadows. Sarah watches him, her heart aching with a pain more profound than any she had experienced in her past. The physical dangers of the velvet curtain were nothing compared to this emotional wreckage. "I know," she whispers, tears finally streaming down her face. "I know I betrayed your trust. I should have told you, from the beginning. I was a coward." He turns back, his eyes hollow, filled with a distant pain. I need time, Sarah." His voice is flat, devoid of emotion. "I need to think, to process this." He gestures vaguely towards the hallway. I'm going to stay at Mark's tonight." The words hit him like a physical blow. Mark, the man who had unknowingly triggered this agonizing reveal. And now David was going to him. The thought of him confiding in anyone, especially someone who might have recognized her, sends a fresh wave of panic through her. "David, please," she pleads, taking another step forward. "Don't go. Let's talk. We can work through this. Please." He meets her gaze, and for a moment she sees a flicker of the love that once bound them, quickly extinguished by the overwhelming hurt. "I can't, Sarah. Not right now."
He turns and walks out of the living room, his footsteps echoing hollowly on the wooden floor. She hears the front door open, then close with a soft, final click. The silence that descends this time is truly devastating. It is not just the absence of sound, but the complete void left by David's departure, by the shattering of their shared world. Sarah sinks to the floor, surrounded by the remnants of her broken life. The photograph of Scarlett lying face up on the coffee table, a stark reminder of the secret that finally destroyed everything. The house, once filled with the warmth of their love, now feels cold, empty, and utterly desolate.
The click of the front door closing echoes in Sarah's ears long after David is gone. The house, usually a sanctuary, transforms into a mausoleum of their shattered dreams. She remains on the floor, curled in on herself, the cold seep of the tiles seeping into her skin. The photograph of Scarlett lies discarded on the coffee table, a cruel, mocking testament to her unraveling. Hours pass, marked only by the slow descent of darkness outside and the oppressive silence within. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind against the windows sounds like David returning, a flicker of desperate hope quickly extinguished. She finally pushes herself up, her limbs stiff and heavy, as if weighted down by the invisible burden of her shame. She wanders aimlessly through the house, her fingers trailing over David's architectural drawings on his desk, his favorite armchair, the half-finished crossword puzzle they had started together last night. Each object, once a symbol of their shared life, now feels like a shard of glass, reminding her of what she has broken. The scent of him still lingers in the air, his cologne, the faint smell of sawdust from his workshop, a cruel phantom of his presence. Her phone buzzes, a sudden jolt in the stillness. It's a text from her friend, Lisa, asking if she wants to grab coffee tomorrow. Sarah stares at the screen, unable to formulate a reply. How could she face anyone, knowing what David now knew? How could she pretend that her world hadn't just imploded? The thought of feigning normalcy, of putting on a brave face, felt utterly impossible. She lets the phone drop onto the sofa cushion, the glowing screen a solitary beacon in the encroaching gloom. Later, she finds herself in their bedroom. The bed, usually a place of comfort and intimacy, feels vast and cold. David's side is undisturbed, the pillow still plump and smooth. She pulls his pillow close, inhaling his faint scent, a desperate attempt to cling to the fragments of him that remain. Tears finally come, not soft, gentle tears, but harsh, guttural sobs that rack her body, tearing at her throat. It's the sound of raw grief, of a woman mourning not just a relationship, but the carefully constructed identity she had built, the future she had so desperately believed in. She thinks of her mother's words, "Some secrets are best left buried." But her mother hadn't known the suffocating weight of carrying such a secret, the way it corroded from within. Sarah had buried it all right, deep beneath layers of normalcy and love, only for it to erupt like a hidden geyser, scalding everything in its path. The night is long and desolate. Sleep is an elusive tormentor, offering only fleeting moments of unconsciousness that quickly shatter into vivid, terrifying dreams of flashing lights, loud music, and judgmental stares. She relives moments from the velvet curtain, the casual cruelty, the desperate smiles, the hollow laughter. Each memory is a fresh stab of pain, reminding her of the person she once was, a ghost that had refused to stay buried. By dawn, when the first faint streaks of gray lighten the sky, Sarah is exhausted, hollowed out. Her eyes are swollen and red, her face pale and drawn. The house is still, silent, bearing witness to her solitary vigil. The emptiness where David should be is a palpable ache in her chest. She had feared losing him, and now it seemed her fear had manifested into reality. The question now was, what was left? And could anything ever be rebuilt from the ashes of such a devastating truth?
Days bleed into a week, each one a mirror of the last for Sarah. The same empty house, the same gnawing silence, the same cycle of despair and self-recrimination. She goes to work, moving through the bookstore like a ghost, her interactions with customers mechanical. Her colleagues notice her pallor, the shadows under her eyes, but she offers vague excuses about a stressful week. The thought of confiding in anyone is still unbearable. David's absence is a physical ache. There are no calls, no texts, no sign from him. The silence from his end is more crushing than any angry confrontation might have been. She texts him once, a hesitant, "Are you okay?" only to receive a terse reply hours later. "I'm fine. Need more time." The brevity of his response is a cold slap, confirming the chasm between them. One afternoon, a small package arrives for David. It's from his mother, a book on urban planning he had mentioned wanting. Sarah places it on his desk, her fingers lingering on the familiar binding. A sudden, desperate urge to reach out to someone, anyone, washes over her. But who? Her family was distant, her friends mostly David's circle. Then, a name surfaces from the forgotten corners of her mind. Lena. Lena had been a friend from her Chicago days, not from the Velvet Curtain, but from an art class she had briefly attended during a brighter period. Lena was a struggling artist, fiercely independent, with a blunt honesty that Sarah had always admired. They'd lost touch years ago, but Sarah still had an old, faded address book tucked away. With trembling hands, she digs out the book. The number for Lena's old apartment is still there. Hesitantly, she dials. The phone rings several times, then clicks. A wary voice answers. "Hello? Lena, is that you? It's Sarah. Sarah Miller." She holds her breath, unsure if Lena would even remember her, let alone welcome a call after so many years. A beat of silence, then a surprised, "Sarah! Wow, it's been ages! What a blast from the past! How are you?" There's a warmth in Lena's voice that Sarah hadn't realized she desperately missed. Sarah forces a shaky laugh. I've been better, honestly, a lot better. Listen, Lena, I know this is out of the blue, but I really need to talk to someone. Are you still in Chicago? Yeah, still here, still trying to make a living off paint fumes. What's going on, Sarah? You sound not like yourself. It's complicated, Sarah says, the lump in her throat returning. It's about everything. My past, my marriage. It's all fallen apart. Lena is quiet for a moment. Sounds heavy. Look, I'm free tomorrow afternoon. My studio is still the same place. Can you make it to Chicago? The thought of leaving the house, of facing the outside world is daunting. But the idea of speaking to someone who knew a version of her before David, someone who might understand the complexities of her past without immediate judgment, is a lifeline. Yes, Sarah says, a desperate tremor in her voice. Yes, I can. Thank you, Lena. Thank you so much. Hanging up the phone, a tiny, almost imperceptible spark ignites within her. It's not happiness, not even hope, but a fragile flicker of purpose. The overwhelming emptiness still lingers, but for the first time in days, Sarah feels a faint pull towards something beyond her own despair. It's a terrifying step, journeying back to the city that holds so many painful memories. But perhaps, in confronting the origins of her secret, she might find the path to healing and possibly even forgiveness. The train ride to Chicago is a journey back in time for Sarah. As the familiar urban sprawl begins to appear outside her window, the distant skyscrapers piercing a bruised sky, the endless highways choked with traffic, a wave of conflicting emotions washes over her. There's the knot of anxiety, a visceral fear of the city that holds so many of her buried demons. But there's also a strange sense of liberation, a faint hope that by revisiting the past, she might finally begin to sever its suffocating hold. Lena's studio is in a renovated industrial building in a lively artistic district. The air inside is thick with the scent of turpentine and oil paint, a stark contrast to the sterile quiet of Sarah's suburban home. Canvases in various stages of completion lean against walls, vibrant with color and raw emotion. Lena, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, is exactly as Sarah remembers. Warm, slightly bohemian, and with eyes that seem to miss nothing. "Sarah!" Lena greets her with a genuine hug, a comforting embrace that makes Sarah realize how long it's been since she felt truly held. Come in, come in. You look like you've been through a war zone." Sarah manages a weak smile. Something like that. They sit on mismatched chairs amidst the creative chaos. Lena hands her a mug of strong, bitter coffee. "All right, spill it. You called sounding like the world ended." Hesitantly, haltingly, Sarah begins to speak. She tells Lena everything. About meeting David, about the lie, about the years of fear. She describes the dinner party, Mark's casual mention of the velvet curtain, and finally, the agonizing moment David found the photograph. As she speaks, the dam breaks, and the tears she had held back for so long flow freely. Lena listens patiently, without interruption, her gaze unwavering, compassionate. "And he just left?" Lena asks softly when Sarah finishes, her voice filled with a quiet sympathy. Sarah nods, wiping her eyes. "He said he needed time. I haven't heard from him properly since." Lena sighs, stirring her coffee. "Look, Sarah, what you did, it was a mistake. A big one. Hiding something like that from someone you love, it's corrosive. It builds walls, not bridges." She pauses, her gaze direct. "But it doesn't erase who you are now, or what you were then." She leans forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You were surviving, Sarah. That life, that place, it wasn't a choice for pleasure, it was a choice for existence. You did what you had to do. That doesn't make you any less worthy of love or respect or a good life." "But David," Sarah whispers, the guilt still heavy on her. "He saw me as someone else, someone pure, untainted." "No one is pure, Sarah," Lena counters, a hint of steel in her voice. "And if his love is so fragile that it can't withstand the truth of your past, then maybe it wasn't as strong as you thought. Or maybe he just needs time to adjust his own expectations. He fell in love with you, Sarah, the woman who exists today, not some ideal he projected onto you." Lena's words are a balm, a cool compress on her raw wounds. It's not absolution, but it's understanding, a perspective Sarah desperately needed. For the first time in weeks, she feels a flicker of something other than despair. "Thank you, Lena," Sarah says, her voice thick with emotion. I just didn't know who else to talk to." "That's what friends are for, even after years of radio silence," Lena says, a wry smile touching her lips. "Now, are you going to sit here moping? Or are we going to face some ghosts?" Sarah looks at her, confused. "Ghosts?" Lena gestures towards the door. "The velvet curtain is still around, you know. Different ownership, I hear. But the building's the same. Maybe you need to see it again. Not to relive it, but to reclaim it. To see it for what it was and for what you've left behind." The thought sends a shiver down Sarah's spine. The thought of stepping back into that world, even for a moment, is terrifying. But Lena's words about reclaiming her past resonate. Perhaps facing it head-on is the only way to truly move forward. The taxi ride to the old neighborhood feels surreal. The familiar streets, once a blur of desperation and late-night shadows, now appears sharper, clearer in the harsh light of day. Sarah's stomach churns with a mix of fear and a strange, almost defiant resolve. Lena sits beside her, a silent, comforting presence. "Are you sure about this?" Lena asks, her voice gentle as the taxi pulls to a stop a block away from the address. Sarah looks at the building. It looks largely the same. The dark brick, the ornate, slightly peeling sign that still reads "The Velvet Curtain," though the letters are faded and some of the neon tubing is broken. It's smaller than she remembers, less imposing, perhaps because she herself is no longer the terrified, desperate young woman who once walked through its doors. "Yes," Sarah says, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I have to." They step out onto the sidewalk. The street is quiet, almost sleepy in the afternoon sun, a stark contrast to the frenetic energy of its nightlife. Sarah takes a deep breath. The air surprisingly clean, not heavy with the lingering scent of stale smoke and cheap perfume she remembers. She walks towards the entrance, Lena a few steps behind her. The heavy dark wood door still has the tarnished brass handle she used to grip, her heart pounding before each shift. She pushes it open. Inside, the air is cool and dim, but cleaner. The scent of old wood and disinfectant replaces the former cloying odors. The velvet curtains that gave the place its name are still there, heavy and opulent, but they look less menacing, more like dusty relics. The bar itself is cleaner, more modern, with polished surfaces and new stools. A few scattered tables and booths fill the space. There are no customers, only a young man wiping down the bar, headphones clamped over his ears. This isn't the place she remembers. Or rather, it is, but stripped of the fear and the desperate energy that once defined it for her. It's just a place, a business. The ghosts of her past are not in the dim lights or the worn floorboards, they're within her. Sarah walks slowly, her eyes scanning the room, searching for fragments of herself. She sees the small stage where karaoke nights were held, the secluded booth where she once fended off an overly persistent customer. Each spot triggers a memory, but instead of the overwhelming dread she expected, there's a strange sense of detachment. She sees the young woman she was, desperate and vulnerable, but also resilient, cunning, and fiercely determined to survive. She sees the Scarlet David saw in the photograph, but she also sees the human being beneath the persona, the one fighting for a future. "It's just a place," she whispers, more to herself than to Lena. Lena comes up beside her. "It never defined you, Sarah. It was a chapter, a hard one, maybe, but you wrote more chapters after it. Chapters with David, chapters where you built a life." A wave of complex emotions washes over Sarah. Sadness for the lost years, regret for the lies, but also a quiet pride in the strength she had found, the strength that had carried her through. She realizes that the shame she carried wasn't about the place itself, or even the action she took, but about the secrecy. The weight wasn't the past, but the deliberate act of hiding it. As they turn to leave, Sarah glances back at the bar one last time. The young man at the bar looks up, briefly, with a polite, impersonal nod. She nods back. There's no recognition, no judgment, just a simple human exchange. The ghost of the velvet curtain has been confronted, and it turns out it was just a memory, not a living entity with the power to destroy her. Stepping back out into the sunlight, Sarah takes another deep breath. The air feels lighter, cleaner, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The shame hasn't vanished entirely, but it no longer feels suffocating. It feels manageable. The first step towards healing, she realizes, isn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it, understanding it, and finally, owning it. The true test, however, still awaits her. Facing David, and somehow finding a way to rebuild the shattered trust between them.
Returning home to the suburban quiet of Connecticut feels different this time. The house, though still empty of David's presence, no longer feels like a tomb. It's simply a house, a space waiting to be filled, perhaps, with something new. Sarah's conversation with Lena and the surprising clarity gained from revisiting the velvet curtain has instilled in her a quiet resolve. The shame is no longer a crushing burden. It's a part of her story, something to be acknowledged, not hidden. She knows she has to reach out to David again, not with pleas or excuses, but with honest acknowledgement and a willingness to face the consequences. She sits at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her fingers hover over his contact. What words could bridge the chasm of his hurt and betrayal? After a long moment, she types, then deletes, then types again. Finally, she settles on a simple, direct message. David, I went to Chicago. I saw the velvet curtain. I understand why you're hurt. I'm so sorry for hiding it. I want to talk, properly, whenever you're ready. She presses send, a shiver of vulnerability running through her. The act itself feels like a monumental step, laying herself bare without a shield. She doesn't know if he will respond, if he will even read it. The silence that follows is agonizing, but it's a different kind of silence than before. One of anticipation, not despair. Hours later, as dusk settles, her phone buzzes. She grabs it, her heart leaping into her throat. It's David. I'll be home tomorrow afternoon. We need to talk. The message is brief, formal, devoid of any warmth, but it's a response. He's coming home. A fragile bridge, perhaps, but a bridge nonetheless. Sarah feels a mix of intense relief and renewed dread. The real conversation is yet to come. The difficult, painful unpacking of years of deception. The next day, Sarah cleans the house meticulously, not out of obligation, but as a way to focus her nervous energy. She wants the space to feel calm, orderly, a contrast to the emotional chaos they are about to navigate. She makes coffee, his favorite brew, and sets out 2 mugs. When David's car pulls into the driveway, the sound of the engine feels deafening. She watches from the window as he gets out, his shoulders still a little slumped, his face tired. He looks different, older somehow, in just a week. He doesn't look angry, but his expression is guarded, distant. He enters the house, and for a moment they simply stand in the entryway, separated by an invisible barrier. The air is thick with unspoken words, with the weight of everything that has transpired. David, Sarah says, her voice trembling slightly. He nods, his gaze sweeping over the familiar space, then settling on her. There is still pain in his eyes, but also a flicker of something she can't quite decipher. Weariness, perhaps, or a nascent curiosity. Can we sit? He asks, his voice flat. They move to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa, a chasm of silence between them. Sarah takes a deep breath, steeling herself. This is it, the moment of truth, a chance, however slim, to begin to heal what has been broken. She knows it won't be easy, and there are no guarantees, but for the first time, she feels ready to truly face him and herself.
The silence in the living room is so profound, Sarah can almost hear the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece, marking the passage of moments laden with unspoken pain.
David sits across from her, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed on some point beyond her shoulder. "David," Sarah begins, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her heart. "I know words aren't enough, but I am truly, deeply sorry. For the lie, for the deception, for the years I let you believe something that wasn't entirely true." She pauses, letting her sincerity hang in the air. "I was afraid you wouldn't understand, wouldn't accept me if you knew my past." David finally turns his head, his eyes meeting hers. There's no anger there, only a profound weariness. "What understand what, Sarah?" he asks, his voice low and strained. "Understand that the woman I married, the woman I built a life with, was a complete stranger to me in so many ways? That you let me fall in love with a version of you that wasn't real?" The accusation stings, but Sarah knows she deserves it. "The person I am with you, David, the person who loves you, that's real. That's the most real I've ever been. The past, it was a circumstance, a survival mechanism. It wasn't who I chose to be, but it was who I had to be at that time." She looks down at her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. "I was ashamed of what I had to do, and terrified of losing the beautiful life we were building." Shame is one thing, Sarah. But a lie of this magnitude, it feels like a betrayal of everything we had, every intimate moment, every shared dream. How can I trust anything you've ever told me now? The question is a direct hit, a raw wound exposed. "I know," she whispers, tears welling in her eyes. "And I don't expect you to trust me immediately, or even to stay. But I needed you to know the truth, the whole truth for me. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, if that's even possible." David finally meets her gaze, his eyes still clouded with pain, but something else too, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even a nascent understanding. The harsh lines of his face soften almost imperceptibly. The truth, finally spoken, hangs between them, a heavy, unyielding presence. It has shattered their peace, but in its brutal honesty, it also offers the faintest possibility of rebuilding, brick by painful brick. David's gaze remains fixed on Sarah, a complex blend of raw hurt and dawning comprehension warring in his eyes. The silence stretches again, but this time it feels less like a chasm and more like a fragile bridge, still trembling but present. I need to understand, Sarah," he finally says, his voice softer, though still laced with pain. "Everything. The details. Not because I want to punish you, but because I need to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with this new truth. How long? Where exactly? What was it like?" Sarah takes a shaky breath, preparing herself. This is the hardest part, laying bare the ugliest fragments of her past, knowing each word could deepen his hurt or push him further away. But she had committed to honesty. It started after my mother got sick. Her medical bills were overwhelming. I was young, barely out of high school, trying to make ends meet with part-time jobs that barely covered rent. I heard about hostess jobs downtown. They paid well, under the table. She pauses, remembering the gnawing desperation. The Velvet Curtain was one of the bigger ones. It wasn't just a bar, it was a club, a place where men went to forget their lives and where women like me went to survive. She describes the atmosphere, the dim lighting designed to obscure, the loud music that drowned out unspoken thoughts, the forced smiles, the endless conversations filled with empty flattery. She speaks of the fear, the constant vigilance, the art of deflection. Sometimes, she admits, her voice barely a whisper. When tips weren't enough, or when there was an urgent bill, I would go further, just to get by. It was never about pleasure, David. It was always about survival. Each time I felt like a piece of me chipped away. I hated it. I hated myself for it. She looks up, meeting his eyes, prepared for his disgust. But what she sees is not disgust, but a profound sadness and a flicker of something that might be empathy. His jaw is clenched and his eyes are clouded, not with judgment, but with the weight of her suffering. "And Scarlett?" he asks, his voice barely audible. It was the name I used there, a persona, someone tougher, bolder, someone who could handle it. Sarah was too soft, too vulnerable. I buried her every time I walked through those doors. He nods slowly, absorbing each painful detail. The air in the room thickens with the weight of her confession, but also, surprisingly, with a fragile thread of understanding. He looks around their living room, at the life they had built, then back at her, his gaze finally settling on her, truly seeing her, perhaps for the first time in years, the woman she was now, and the shadow of the woman she had been. "I can't pretend this isn't devastating, Sarah," he says, his voice hoarse. "It fundamentally changes everything I thought I knew. I feel betrayed, yes, but I also feel incredibly sad for what you went through, and angry that you felt you couldn't trust me with it." He reaches across the space between them, hesitantly, and takes her hand. His touch is gentle, hesitant, but it's a contact she hadn't dared to hope for. I don't know what happens now," he says, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "I need time to process all of this, to understand it, to figure out if we can move past this. But thank you for telling me the truth. Finally." Tears well up in Sarah's eyes, but this time they are not tears of shame or despair, but of raw, aching relief. The truth has been unveiled, and while it has inflicted deep wounds, it has also miraculously opened a tiny, fragile window for honesty and potential healing. The road ahead is long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, Sarah feels a faint glimmer of hope, a chance that the shadows of her past might eventually recede.
The week that follows David's return is a delicate tightrope walk. The immediate raw pain has subsided, replaced by a heavy, almost fragile peace. They talk, not in long, intense confessions, but in fragments, piecing together the shattered narrative of Sarah's past and its impact on their present. Sarah answers every question, no matter how uncomfortable, refusing to shy away from the ugliness of her former life. She speaks of the fear, the desperation, the dehumanization, but also of the sheer will to survive. David listens, his expressions shifting between sorrow, anger, and a quiet contemplation. He asks about the specific moments, the daily grind, the emotional toll. He needs to understand the truth, not just intellectually, but emotionally, to truly comprehend the depth of her struggle and the fear that had driven her to hide it. Sometimes he walks away, needing space to process, to wrestle with the betrayal that still gnawed at him. Sarah gives him that space, enduring the quiet of his absence, knowing it's a necessary part of his healing. One evening, David returns from a run, his face flushed, sweat dripping from his hair. He finds Sarah in the kitchen, making dinner. He leans against the doorframe, watching her for a long moment. "I found an old article online about the velvet curtain, the kind of place it was." Sarah's heart clenches, bracing herself for renewed anger. "And?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. He pushes off the doorframe and walks closer, stopping a few feet from her. It painted a pretty grim picture. Drugs, shady dealings, vulnerable women. It made me realize it wasn't just a choice. It was a situation, a trap almost. He looks at her,
his eyes still holding a deep sadness, but also a new, raw empathy. I'm not saying it makes the lie okay, Sarah, but it helps me understand the fear you must have lived with, the fear that made you hide it. Sarah's eyes fill with tears. This is the first time he has acknowledged her struggle, truly seen the desperation behind her actions. It was terrifying, David, she admits, her voice cracking. Every single day. And when I met you, I saw a way out, a chance for a normal life. I was so scared I'd ruin it if you knew. He reaches out, hesitantly, and places his hand on her arm. His touch is light, almost tentative, but it sends a jolt of warmth through her. I'm not sure if I can ever fully get over the deception, Sarah. That trust, it's shattered, but I'm willing to try to rebuild it. For us, for the life we had before this all came out. Sarah turns, tears streaming down her face, and gently takes his hand. "Thank you, David," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for even considering it. I promise you, I will spend every day earning back your trust. I will never hide anything from you again." The road ahead is long, fraught with silent moments of doubt and occasional surges of residual pain. There are times when David pulls away, when a memory or a passing thought triggers the hurt anew. But they begin to talk through these moments, not pushing anything under the rug. Sarah learns to be patient, to allow him his process, to understand that rebuilding trust is not a single event, but a continuous, painstaking effort. They attend a few counseling sessions, recommended by David's sister, who he had confided in. The therapist provides a neutral ground, guiding them through the thorny thicket of their emotions, helping them to communicate their hurt and their hopes. It's an agonizing, slow process, but with each step, a tiny fragment of their bond begins to reknit. The love is still there, a resilient ember, but it needs careful tending to rekindle its flame.
Months pass. The seasons shift, bringing winter's stark beauty, then the hesitant promise of spring. The air in the Miller home, once thick with tension, gradually softens. The long silences are less about unspoken secrets and more about comfortable companionship, punctuated by genuine laughter. The healing isn't linear. There are good days and bad days, moments of deep connection, and moments when the ghost of the past casts a long shadow. But they face them together, no longer isolated by deceit. Sarah continues her work at the bookstore, finding renewed purpose in the quiet world of books. She occasionally volunteers at a local women's shelter, sharing her story, not of being a bar girl, but of surviving hardship and finding resilience. It's a way for her to process her past, not as shame, but as a source of strength that can help others. David, too, has changed. The initial shock and hurt have given way to a deeper understanding of Sarah's resilience and the complexities of human experience. He's become more empathetic, less rigidly attached to his perfect world. He finds a quiet strength in Sarah's honesty, seeing not just the pain she endured, but the incredible courage it took to survive and then to confess. He realizes that their love, though severely tested, is now forged in a new, stronger fire of brutal honesty. One crisp spring morning, Sarah wakes to the sound of birdsong. Sunlight streams through the bedroom window, painting stripes across the duvet. David is already awake, propped up on his elbow, watching her. "Morning," he whispers, a soft smile on his lips. His eyes, clear and warm, hold no shadows, only love. "Morning," she replies, leaning in to kiss him. The kiss is gentle, lingering, filled with a depth of emotion born from shared pain and hard-won trust. "I was thinking," David says,
stroking her hair. "Maybe we could take that trip to the coast we talked about. Just the two of us. No plans, no agenda. Just be." Sarah smiles, a genuine, unburdened smile that reaches her eyes. The idea of a fresh start, a new memory forged in light and honesty, feels like a breath of fresh air. "I'd love that," she says, her voice soft. They get out of bed, the silence between them no longer a chasm, but a comfortable shared space. As Sarah moves about the kitchen, preparing coffee, she glances at the framed wedding photo on the counter. Her smile in the picture is bright, happy. But the Sarah standing there now, though carrying the scars of her past, possesses a deeper strength, a more profound understanding of what love truly means. Not perfection, but acceptance, forgiveness, and the relentless courage to face the truth, no matter how painful. The velvet curtain is still a part of her story, a faded photograph in a drawer she no longer feels compelled to hide. It's a reminder of where she came from and how far she has traveled. But it no longer defines her. She is Sarah, the wife, the survivor, the woman learning to live with transparency and a hard-earned peace. Their happiness isn't automatic, but something they consciously build each day, with honesty as its cornerstone. The echoes of the past will always be there, a faint murmur, but the dominant sound in their lives is now the quiet, steady rhythm of a love rebuilt, stronger and truer than before.